Hey, welcome to the Open House Show. It's your host, Jesse Meadow. We've got a good show for you today. I'm very excited to be welcoming Matthew Peer. He is Director of Enrollment Management at the Darlington School in Georgia. We're going to be talking about academy programs, the benefits that they may have on the enrollment, the little trick up their sleeve that they may be for some admissions directors, and possibility of enhancing or enacting something along your school. So without further ado, let's bring him on. Matthew, hey, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Jesse. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's a busy time of year, so I appreciate you taking 30, 45 minutes here and just discussing some academy programs with me. I'm excited about the topic.
Well, thanks. I'm really excited as well. The academies have been a great recruiting tool for us, helps students be involved in the life of the school, and creates opportunities for students after high school and in the college ranks.
That's perfect. So, I know that you're new to admissions, new into the role. So, not new to schools, but new into the role. So, I'd love to hear, kind of your journey to admissions. And then what are some things that you're noticing, with your first year going in there?
Oh, thanks. So, I began my teaching career fall of 2001. I was a triple threat New England boarding school guy, actually a junior boarding school teacher, teaching history, coaching football, hockey, and lacrosse, sit down breakfast, lunch, and dinner, living on dorm. And I loved it, and transitioned from a all boys junior boarding school in New Hampshire to an all boys high school in Connecticut. Continued to be that triple threat, and as is the independent school way, the better you are at responsibilities, the more responsibilities they give you.
That's right.
And then after a couple years, sort of got a role in the dean's office at Avon Old Farms. And then our family dynamics changed. We started a family. My in-laws moved from Vermont to South Carolina, and we wanted to be closer to them. And when you're thinking about independent schools, especially independent schools with a boarding program in the South, there aren't many of us. And a great opportunity presented itself at the Darlington School for me to be the director of student life. And I was in that role for 4 years. We had a leadership change, and Brent Bell, our new head of school, asked me to become the upper school director. So for the next 6 years, I revamped the entire academic program at Darlington, thinking about our cycle of learning. And then we started a nationwide search for a director of enrollment management last spring. The pandemic hit, and at the beginning of May, as we were canceling our graduation, Brent asked me if I would be the director of enrollment management this year. And there's been a huge learning curve, really starting to understand the business side of an independent school. But there's been great opportunities to take my student life experience and my director of the upper school academic experience and help tell the story to families this year. So I think actually it's been great, sort of the training I've had, because I've done it. I've been on dorm, I've been on weekend activities, I've been in the classroom and on the playing fields, and now I can help families who may not be as familiar with independent schools really understand the value proposition of them.
Yeah, that's encouraging. And not only that, that boarding piece, that's difficult to explain, especially to someone that hasn't experienced it before. So, having that background, for me, I was in admissions first, and then I was kind of in student life, and then, juggling back and forth. And we built the schedule for the activities and all of this. So when you go back and talk to a family, it's like, okay, well, they're going to do X, Y, Z, and this is how they're going to do it. And you have all this knowledge about it, and you're able to represent that culture and that experience a lot more, doing those things first and then coming in to the admission side. So that's a real big benefit there. What are it's always good to know, like, what is some interesting or some exciting things that you're liking about the job so far? I know it's a very different hat that you've got on from what you experienced before, and it can be definitely more stressful in a lot of ways when you're talking about budgets, when you're talking about revenue, especially navigating the current environment. But what have been some exciting things for you, at least in your perspective?
I think what's been nice is being able to focus on our marketing. Realizing that I have a experienced admissions team, and they're great. So don't get me wrong, but I think they sold community a lot. and trying to understand that community, we all have community, whether you're a school of 100 students in the Midwest, a boarding school of 800 students in Massachusetts. We all have great community. So how do we really define the programs that make us unique? So being able to retrain my team has been exciting. Normally when my phone number popped up on somebody's caller ID, they would ignore it, thinking that their child was going to be in trouble. So, now it's hey, let's go out to lunch. Let's do X, Y, or Z. Being able to connect with some alumni in key demographic regional areas to hear about their Darlington experience, and do they know anybody that may be a good fit for Darlington. So just a lot of positivity. We have over 9,000 living alums who are all eager to see the school be in a position of success. So everybody's wanting to help. Everybody's wanting to try and figure out admissions in a global pandemic. So that's been a huge positive for us.
The impetus is definitely on admissions as a school-wide program. If it wasn't before, it definitely is now. So everyone's kind of doing their part. That is a very interesting point, though, that you bring up, that most people, especially if you haven't transitioned between positions in the same school, when your name comes up on a caller ID, depending on what you're overseeing, gets a very different response sometimes, or vice versa. Who's calling you?
Yeah. So it's been fun to navigate that.
That's right. So, tell us a little bit about the Darlington School. I know we're going to get into specifically kind of the academy programs and such, but tell us what draws families to Darlington for anyone that's not very acknowledged about it.
Yeah. Oh, great. So I'll be honest. I had never heard of Darlington. Never thought I'd be living in Rome, Georgia. But what I appreciate about Darlington is that we are a pre-K through 12 day school with a robust boarding program in grades 9 through 12, because of our academy, some postgraduate opportunities. We're located about an hour north of Atlanta, an hour south of Chattanooga, about 90 miles from Birmingham. And we are right in the center of the ABC Triangle here in Georgia. And Darlington was named, the founders of the school named the school Darlington after their favorite teacher. So Darlington has a long tradition of supporting excellence in education through professional development, making sure in the hiring process that we are hiring individuals who love working with this age group, who have a passion for their subject and contribute to the extracurricular life of the school. One of the things that drew my wife and I here, she's also an educator, was that Darlington was always looking to get better and improve. No one was happy with the status quo. That was the feeling that we got during the interview process, and it's still the same way. As we think about our cycle of learning, which focuses on hands-on and active learning, we're really focused on the individual. And I know that is something that all schools are talking about, is the individual student experience. But we have several signature programs, which I think really highlight that individual approach. As a college preparatory school, families are asking about our college process. We have a different model than most day and or boarding schools. Whereas a traditional college counselor would have a probably 30 or 40 students they are working with. We have an office of 12, 3 full-time college counselors and 9 faculty members or administrators who also help in the college process. So you're in a college group about a 1-to-10 ratio.
Okay.
Our students will typically be accepted at over 180 schools. They'll matriculate to over 80 schools and average about $8 million in scholarships. So by having 12 college counselors, you really get that individual approach to the application, to the essay, to that school selection. So that's one program. I think about we have an English house system. So students have a head of house. It's a full-time employee. It's not the triple threat model in New England. I remember being a dorm head and just being exhausted when I got back to the dorm at night. But our heads of house, they're there for the academic, social, emotional needs of the students that live with them. They're a primary contact person for the parents, in addition to an academic advisor. So college counseling, the heads of house, our teaching and learning center that can support students with a variety of learning differences, all sort of show that individual approach to education. And it's about relationships. It's about those relationships that I had as a student at independent school, that our alumni had, that our students have today. So I think that hands-on learning, our geographic location, we are a draw for families in not just that ABC triangle, but one of the few southern boarding schools. We're seeing more and more, sort of, I think the business term is third culture kids, whose parents, may work for Delta or Coca-Cola and are stationed in Singapore or Australia, wanting that American high school experience. So that is a growing trend that we are seeing, and being about an hour from Atlanta's airport really helps with that.
Yeah, and I would imagine, we'll kind of get to this a little bit later, but throwing it out there, I imagine that trend of urban to rural or urban to suburb, is probably benefiting your area as well. That's a great point with the college. What a good program to have on that, and a good focal point for a college prep school to really invest in. That is by far, the most daunting experience for the parents and students of seniors or even juniors when they start that process. It's heavy, it's burdensome, it's tedious. To have someone walk you through it and feel confident that you're doing the best things for you is a real benefit there. But transitioning a little bit, talking about some other programs I know that draws some students to your school. Those specialty academies, those programs that you guys have, the topic of today's conversation. I guess let's begin with the history and which academies you guys have on campus. What do you guys promote? What is your specialties and kind of the history behind them?
Yeah, so it was about 15 years ago, Darlington decided that it wanted to venture into this academy model for several of our sports. First and foremost, soccer is a very popular draw for us, as well as golf and tennis. The school has tried some other academies in the past. The one that I laugh about is horseback riding. When you don't have, on your 500-acre campus, if you don't have a facility to raise horses and train horses, it becomes very person-specific as whose farm will you use, and realizing that there's other great schools out there that have horseback riding as part of their curriculum. That was, I think, a 12-month endeavor. But we have found success with our soccer, golf, and tennis academies. Do you want me to go on and talk a little bit more about them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So when we think about soccer, we traditionally have 2 or 3 boys teams, depending on the numbers of players each year, and 1 girls team. They are playing in the club circuit, so they will travel primarily to showcases throughout the country. Whether it's up to Indianapolis, to Raleigh, to Disney for their tournaments. They will travel overseas every other year. In fact, they were in Paris in March of last year, and we got them home within 12 hours. So,
wow.
So the students are getting those opportunities to play in front of a variety of college coaches, Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA. And what I appreciate about the soccer academy in particular is that we are college prep, that students are in classes throughout the full school day. They have an opportunity to train in the afternoons and evenings. They'll travel on the weekends. And when they travel, they will try and visit as many colleges that are in the area as possible. This year, they've been on over 50 college campuses, which is quite a feat considering we are in a global pandemic and we are in the NCAA dead period for recruiting. But we want to make sure that students know the strengths of a large public institution, a small private institution, urban, rural, suburban. We want to give them as much exposure in that college process as possible.
That's right.
Our golf academy is actually housed at the Coosa Country Club, which is about 3 miles down the road. The academy is run by the 2 pros at the country club. The students will have a strength and conditioning on Mondays when the club is closed, but they will work on their game Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays, and then play in the U.S. the Georgia PGA Junior events throughout the state and the Southeast on weekends. So they may be down at Sea Island, they may be outside Atlanta, in South Georgia, Carolinas, playing in events, usually about 2 events per month. And those are based on the students' abilities. You know, golf being more of an individual sport, especially at the academy level, is that the Brian and Tripp, our pros, are going to put students in a position to be successful, making sure that they're playing in the tournaments that will benefit them the most. While we have had a tennis academy for several years, we're very excited with a new partnership that we have. The USTA built a 63-court facility on Berry College's campus. Berry is one of the 4 local colleges here in Rome. It's the largest hard court facility in the country. It has 6 indoor courts. The ACC championship was here 2 years ago. It'll be here for the next couple of years. Our players have the play site technology, so their parents can log in and watch them compete and train. It's also a great recruiting tool for colleges. So we're very excited about the direction that the tennis academy is going to be going, trying to become on par with our golf and soccer academies.
Yeah, those are 3 perfect programs, to build academies around. I mean, you can have the sky's the limit with the opportunities that you have there, and expanding it even more from there. I know you tried your hand at some other ones, and for whatever reason they didn't work. I'm sure they all have their various reasons. I'd be interested. How does the scheduling work with something like that? In my experience, I know it's intense. I mean, you're there for a purpose, and it's the college prep that you building character throughout both sides, the academic and the athletic side. That athletic academic balance, how do you guys strike that at Darlington?
Yeah, great. So as I mentioned in my role as the upper school director, about 6 years ago, we worked with ISM on a schedule overhaul because we really wanted to focus on that active hands-on learning. And as we were thinking about brain research and best practices in education, knowing that there needs to be periods of reflection between class meetings for students to really absorb and retain that information, we went with the model that classes will meet for extended periods of time, but less frequently. So what does that mean? That means in the high school, it's more like a college schedule. We have an 8-day rotating schedule, and classes meet every other day. So it is actually a great benefit to our academy athletes. So if you're traveling to that tournament in Indianapolis and you need to leave Thursday afternoon after school and you miss Friday classes, well, those classes won't meet again till Tuesday. And we have extra help sessions built into the academic day so that on Monday, those students that miss school on Friday can go and see their teachers to review problems, to get notes, to make sure they understand the skills that were taught in class that day to be ready for Tuesday's class.
Oh, that's perfect.
So our schedule sort of enhances that academy experience because of our rotating classes, that no 2 Fridays are ever the same. So even if you were leaving at lunchtime on Friday, the classes as they rotate through the day will never be the same ones at that afternoon. What's nice about our new partnership with our tennis academy is that we are hosting 2 UTR events per month here in Rome. There's actually a tournament 52 weekends of the year at this beautiful facility, but our student athletes have the opportunity to play locally. Those tournaments would start Friday afternoon and go through Saturday. And the way the UTR works is it's different than some of the USTA rankings, is that you get points based on the skills of your opponent. So we actually had an opportunity, one of our first tournaments this fall, some of our new players were competing against students on the Auburn tennis team, a student that plays at Ohio State and West Virginia. So while he may not have won a match, he still gained points the way this system works. And it's actually what colleges are looking at your UTR ranking as they're thinking about the scholarship process. So we're hoping that will also be something, having local tournaments, you're not having to travel as far, that will entice students to want to come here for the college and the tennis.
That had to be a good experience for them, especially with, principally speaking, you only get better when you play better.
Hmm.
You don't necessarily have to dominate, but you're going to get better when you start playing some college
Hmm.
level players. That's
Yeah.
great. You know, I know for a lot of schools, they didn't even have the option of athletics. Here we are talking about a specialty program for athletics. I guess, going into my next question, how were you able to prepare with all of the COVID mitigation responsibilities? What did that look like? I guess locally in Georgia, because it's pretty much, it's done state by state as far as regulations go. And, how were you able to prepare for that athletic season and I guess continuously maintain throughout as well?
Yeah, great question. And I know every school had a different approach to their thought process. So early on in the pandemic, our head of school established 3 committees. One committee was looking at the business and finance side of what reopening would look like. Another group was looking at what does teaching and learning look like if we need to be virtual, if we need to be hybrid, if we're in person. And then there was a third group which was looking at the health of our community. Since I was the upper school director at that time, I was on all 3 committees.
Okay.
And I got to lead our health of the community committee just with my student life background. So we tried to come up with a philosophy early on. We knew that we could not prevent the spread of COVID-19. Our job was to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. So we began educating ourselves, partnering with our local health department, partnering with our local medical community, and just trying to decipher all of the different information that was coming out, whether it was SAIS, NAIS, TAB, CDC,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to figure out, well, what does this mean for Darlington, knowing that we are in a small community where Rome, Georgia has 100,000 people. Its primary source of economics is hospitals and doctors. So we have a great medical community here. We had some of the parents in the medical community that were on our health of the community committee. So we began thinking about how do we structure a school day? Can we have the dorms open? What do the dorms need to look like? What does our health center need to be able to do? And so we made changes. We made physical changes to campus, turning one of our dorms into an expanded health center for the year,
Mm-hmm.
making class sizes smaller. But then also thinking about if we have a philosophy during the school day at night in the dining hall, how does that philosophy translate to athletics? Because we weren't given as much guidance by our local or the state, the Georgia High School Athletic Association.
Right.
We were getting very clear guidance locally, but at the state level, it was have fans if you want to have fans. Don't put a cap on it. Put a cap on it. So we tried to take our guiding principles to mitigate the spread of the disease and apply it to athletics. It meant that, because we're in Georgia and the weather is so nice in the fall, you weren't going into the locker rooms. You were doing a lot of, getting dressed in your dorm room, showering when you get home from practice if you're a day student, but really just trying to limit the close contact that students had with each other off the field.
Mm-hmm.
And then thinking about our visitor policies and protocols. Being in Georgia, high school football is a big deal on Friday nights, and having 200 tickets for students and about 100 students for parents in our community that didn't have a child playing. It felt different, but we were able to compete in every game. We did not have to cancel any athletic contests in the fall. As we went into a spring season or our winter season, obviously going indoors is harder.
Mm-hmm.
But we, again, limiting attendance at basketball games, having those mask mandates, swimming. My children are on our swim team. Live streaming events so parents and spectators could watch, and not allowing people into the natatorium was important. We have the area wrestling tournament this weekend. So the fact that we were able to successfully have a wrestling season, given all that we know or don't know about COVID-19, I think comes down to our training staff. Our athletic trainers, our athletic director, just staying on top of our policies and procedures, making sure that we're wearing masks, making sure that we're following the latest guidelines, that we're cleaning regularly. And again, what it really comes down to is the buy-in from your community.
Yeah.
Our parents wanted in-person learning. Our faculty wanted in-person learning. Our students certainly wanted to be on campus and socialize and have that academics. So they have bought in. We're heading into a spring sports season. I'm wearing my lacrosse shirt or my lacrosse sweater right now because we're 1 week into practice, and it's hard. It's hard thinking about coaching with a mask, making sure everybody brings their own water bottle each and every day. But it really made the way that we've rethought teaching and learning, I think, is also what coaches are having to do.
Yeah.
You really are staying spread out. You're not huddling up and explaining drills. You're trying to really focus on that individual skill progression, at least at this point in the season for my team. So I've had to rethink the way that I coach each and every day. Traveling to athletic competitions, trying to cohort the teams, making sure that less passengers on the bus. Could parents assist with driving their child to the game? Just really rethinking how we do everything. And when you talk with our booster clubs, they're like, well, concessions are down and ticket sales are down, and I'm like, well, we're having school. Our kids are healthy. Our kids are learning. So, but it's again, trying to think about that business side of school. You're used to 2,000 people at a football game. Now you have 200. They're buying less soda and hot dogs, and it's at the end of the day, we think that providing the social, emotional growth for students is extremely important, and we were going to do almost whatever it takes to make that happen.
It's important to try to keep perspective. You might be so used to what you're doing that you forget that, there's many schools that are not even participating in sports at all, much less having a game, even though it has low attendance, because of COVID protocols. That's great. But kind of on that front, I guess, maybe you saw a draw to your school last enrollment season, maybe not, maybe it was too soon. But on the topic of kind of enrollment benefits of having an academy of programs, what have you seen as far as, your experience with having an academy program as kind of a niche trick up your sleeve, I guess, in that enrollment process, something to offer families and students?
Yeah, I think that, a couple benefits. One of our largest pipelines for our soccer academy is Alaska. So areas where year-round sports are not possible, either because of the weather or facilities, because of our warmer climate than the majority of the country. Having students being able to play that sport that they're passionate about 10, 11 months out of the year is extremely beneficial. What we are seeing, and I think we're all going to be seeing this industry-wide, is with this pause in-person learning for so many students, people having to navigate the college process, thinking about, well, do I need another year of school, whether it's repeating a grade, staying back, a gap year. And in Georgia and in so many of the southern states, the High School Athletic Association gives you 4 years of eligibility that run concurrently beginning with 9th grade. So for any student who needs that academic or social emotional growth that another year provides, they're going to be unable to play in our local or our regional state association. So if you're interested in playing soccer and tennis and in golf, and you need that additional year of school, our academies provide a great opportunity for you to be able to do that. I think what draws families to our academies is that college first focus. And my St. Lawrence banner is behind me. We celebrate Grace, who graduated 2 years ago, that went to a small liberal arts college in northern New York to play Division III lacrosse. The same way that we talk about Jane Campbell, goes to Stanford and is now a goalie on the U.S. national women's team, is that we have that individual approach. We're thinking about college prep, and we know that every student's path is different. We actually have a young man who is a phenomenal soccer player who realized that the types of schools that I want to go to, soccer is not going to be a possibility, at UNC or at the Ivy Leagues. And so he decided to take his senior year off to really focus on getting that every opportunity to get into one of those highly selective colleges. And we support that because we know that college athletics is a commitment. And I think we see that a lot on the golf and the tennis side, is that there's lifelong learning opportunities in those skills that can be developed, not just on a soccer field, but on a golf course, on a tennis court. And we want to support students who want to further their academic career in college at the collegiate level, but also those students that use this for the camaraderie, for the team building, for the leadership skills that are developed in high school sports. So, we're not a Division I or bust program. We are really focused on that individual and giving them opportunities to be successful with the types of competitions that they're in.
Yeah, my experience has been quite similar with these academy programs. I mean, you're building so many extra pieces to that student's life and student experience. I mean, you're talking each program might have their own character building, that has their own emphasis and their own support systems through there, all the way into that college process. That's the entire focus on it. I imagine in your case, you'll have, several different teams competing at different skill levels, depending on where you are. And you can kind of rise and fall between those ranks. So, a normal situation, if you've only got one or two teams, there's a lot of kids that aren't going to get playing time, or they're not going to get that experience, that might be fine for that D3 level. But when you have a robust academy program, you're able to get those kids trained at their best level. What was interesting for me, especially on the international front, and I know the pandemic has kind of halted that in so many different ways, but, countries, sometimes it's not really an option to do both, this college prep mentality of academics and your sport. You kind of had to choose, do I want to become a professional soccer player, or do I want to go to school and go to college? Because I can't really do both. My schedules don't allow for that to happen at home. They come to a place in the States where, like yourselves, that offer both aspects. I can grow you as a person, as a character, as a student, get you academically ready for that next level, as well as get you ready for that next level and beyond on the athletic level. So that's really important. And with the focus being obviously college admissions, whether that be D1, D3, D2, or professional, in soccer specifically, it's a little bit unique in that, you can sign professional deals at this age. But, with some of your other programs, how have the colleges responded to these academy programs as far as the, recruitment efforts? I know you kind of touched on it before, but is it something that's beneficial that maybe what wouldn't be there as far as the interest and those, I guess, pipelines, those connections that you guys have?
Yeah, I think, from a college recruiting perspective, they know a college coach will know that our students are going to be prepared for that workload in the classroom with the travel and training schedule, that they know that whether a student is here for 1, 2, 3, or 4 years, that they have that good foundation. Our students can have really worked on those executive functioning skills. They have the time management down. They have that drive and that desire. We will have, I think about our golf academy. We had one young man who's playing Division I golf this year, and he is going to be very successful. And did the academy help him get there? I'm not sure. I think he probably would have gotten there training at his local country club, playing on the circuits that he was playing on before he got to Darlington. We have another student who's going to be playing Division III golf next year, who the academy certainly got him those opportunities. So, I think it is sports specific. I think the exposure that we give our players and the training regimen and those skills are looked favorably upon by college coaches. What I didn't mention, and I think it's important, is that in addition to our golf, soccer, and tennis academies, we also have Georgia High School Athletic Association golf, tennis, and soccer. So we do have another alternative for the student that isn't up to the rigor of the training and the travel with the academy. So, we do see students, it's a two-way street. Some will start playing Georgia High School and switch to the academy. Some will start with the academy and then go to Georgia High School. because it is all about fit. We don't want to lose a great student because there isn't that opportunity to play if they're maybe not as good as they thought they were, or an injury has slowed them down, or their college aspirations have changed. We want to make sure that students have that opportunity to excel. I think the college process is going to be very intriguing these next 6 to 24 months, as the NCAA is granting everybody an extra year of eligibility, as you're still in this NCAA dead period. Students that weren't able to be seen last spring or this year, is there going to be scholarship money? Are there going to be roster spots available? And I think you will see an increase in the number of postgraduates or students sort of pausing. And so I think there will be a trickle-down effect that could benefit all independent schools, especially independent boarding schools. I think back to my time in Connecticut, we'd have 2 or 3 commissioned cadets from West Point that were postgraduates each year. And when you add that type of student to your community, it changes the culture with natural-born leaders living in the dorms. And I'm hopeful that we can all benefit. As hard as it is to say, we want to benefit from pandemic, I think college coaches may be slowing down on the recruiting and with scholarships and spots they have available. Independent schools can thrive because we can be flexible. We can be creative and student-centered to make sure that we're preparing students for college when it is appropriate for them to begin their schooling.
No, that's completely understandable. And that post-grad piece, and obviously that kind of coexists and goes along with, the academy programs. It's not really so possible, at least on the athletic side, without it. That's going to be a crucial piece. I mean, there's a lot of kids that, for no fault of their own, weren't able to progress, whether it be athletically, academically. They're going to need that extra training. They're going to need that extra year before they jump in, or, where they were because of the lack of training isn't quite where they thought they would be, and they want to get that extra year to get a little bit higher. Not saying that they didn't have any options, but, when we were talking about this before, you brought up a good point. I don't want to forget to bring it up. But we were talking about kind of pandemic trends in athletics, and you talked a lot about this kind of this gap of students that decided to stay home, and now they're coming back, and they're missing transcripts, they're missing grades because they missed this time, and they're not correlating that progression, that natural progression into the NCAA and into the colleges. Have you seen that a little bit more prevalently than normal? And how are you guys addressing that as best you can? Some of it's really out of your hands.
Yeah, Jesse, I think that's a great point. I think with my unique sort of path to this role as Director of Enrollment Management, I'm able to navigate this probably a little bit better than some other seasoned or established directors of enrollment management, because I can talk with families and students about what does this mean for the college process.
Mm-hmm.
We had the Atlanta public schools have been virtual almost the whole year. Some students have been struggling with that, and students went an entire semester without earning credits because either they just chose not to be in school, or their grades weren't high enough to grant them credit. And families are struggling. Families are looking for what are our options. So from that academic aspect, I can talk about that idea of repeating a grade. What could we do second semester? What can we be thinking about with summer options? Because I don't think families quite understand what colleges will be looking for when it comes to your English and math and social sciences credits. And when they don't understand that, then trying to explain the NCAA clearinghouse to them, their mind is blown. So, it's not just about a standardized test score. And I think that's what the strength of an independent school curriculum is that it is relationships, it is skills-based. So trying to help families understand here's where we are right now. Here's where we'll be when your child walks across the graduation stage. What are the variety of paths that we can take to get there? And, I think that's where a seasoned admissions officer would partner with the academic leader of the high school to help those families. And I'm thankful and I think Darlington's lucky that I've been able to wear different hats so that I'm not having to all right, talk with our new upper school director, talk with our assistant head for academics that we can have those conversations. And they started off maybe one every other week in September and October. It's probably a daily conversation right now with families that are turning to independent schools for answers because their students aren't not just getting that social emotional growth from in-person learning, but that academic skills-based development. It's very hard when they are on a laptop for the majority of the day because their local schools cannot be in person. So
Yeah.
it's challenging to navigate, but I think that independent schools are there to help support families. So whether it's Darlington or any of the 280 boarding schools, I think the admissions officers would be very willing to talk with you or your child about what does their path look like, given all the uncertainty that's going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, luckily for you, the academy programs have brought, one, the ability to even play at all being in Georgia. Now we've got the postgraduate program. You've got the one-on-one attention from the admission side to the, academic side. How do we make these transcripts work? How does this, process work from start to finish? What's going to look like? What to expect? I mean, given the family expectations up front as much as possible is so key, so that they don't think that they're going to be on here and they're like, oh, well, you promised you'd get into here. Like, man, I told you from the beginning, this is what the case was going to be. I don't know. But any event, that's all huge benefits and big draws for schools to be able to have some of those opportunities, especially when you're trying to navigate this enrollment market of today. It's curious. I imagine you're in the same boat as any boarding school with international students. Have you seen, we're starting to get now, to the end points of re-enrollments, maybe a few more weeks. And then, kind of that first round, that March 10th, that first round of acceptances go out. We're getting into the season. Are we seeing any uptick in international, or because of, the variety and the not, clear cutness of where this pandemic is still going to go, even though we're on more of a, positive trend with vaccines and possibilities. Are you seeing anything different with the international market right now, or is that still kind of up in the air, too early to tell kind of thing?
I think some of the trends that we're seeing, and I'm not trying to dance around your question, being new to this, trying to understand the data.
Yeah.
What I can verify is that the number of domestic boarding inquiries is up significantly from over the past 2 years. And as we begin to sort of look at the data, a lot of those students are coming from areas where they're still virtually learning. A lot of metropolitan areas, and you start looking at zip codes, you're realizing, all right, this student is still not in school. Parents are looking for options for them. When it comes to the international inquiries, we last time I looked, we were about 55% less Chinese applications than last year. But I think the caveat to that is when I talk with my admissions counselors, they feel that the relationships, the intent, and the investment from the families that they are working with from Asia is significantly better. That these families, they know a lot more about the school, they understand the process. I think families are doing their due diligence in Asia as they are thinking about coming to a school like Darlington. Mm-hmm. So it feels like we're making more authentic connections and relationships this year with Chinese students. As we look at some other areas, we are seeing dramatic increases in applicants from some of the African nations, from the Caribbean, from Central South America and Europe. And the trend is that they're all 11th graders. I've prepared my predecessor for a larger 11th grade than normal, but it gets to the point, what is too large? You don't want to be budgeting and prepared for 130 students and be like, hey, guess what? We have 170. It doesn't programmatically, it doesn't work. So, we are seeing students that I think probably would have come to boarding school in 10th grade, whether it was Darlington or a different school, waiting that year and now looking for those 2 years before they begin that college university in the United States. So, we are seeing a shift in the ages. That the applicants are a little bit older than they have been in the previous years. Still, we typically will have students that come from about 25 different countries. We do have some new countries on, like new countries on that list: Ethiopia, Morocco. It is growing. Belize, some countries where we traditionally haven't done much outreach, much marketing, but families are at least in the application process right now from those 3 countries, and specifically, in addition to our traditional countries where students come from.
That's exciting. I mean, that's the biggest cultural piece that you get on campus, the things you can't learn in books. And let me tell you, from my experience, those West African nations, gosh, some of the best kids that I've hardest working, there for the right reasons, always smiling, the energy, leaders of the teams, great kids you can find from all over the world. But those West African nations, they have some of those kids, I'm thinking about them now. They're close to my heart, and I hope they do well in everything they do. I hope you get the same caliber coming your way. They're going to do wonders for your campus. I'm excited to hear that there's some progression, some new things coming your way. But I agree. I think that that focus of the domestic boarding piece might be the saving grace in some boarding schools. Being able to add a little bit of that and balance out that decrease in the international admissions piece might be the only way to go. Because there are a lot of places, where they might have the means to send their kid to boarding school, or maybe you meet them certain ways. It's better than zero sometimes, depending on your budget, because they're virtual at home, here
Right.
in the States still. They're looking for that different option. It's been too long now. They don't want to wait. They don't want to miss out on those semesters and things like that. So that's great. So, transitioning now to the end, we always like to hear a little bit about regional perspectives. I know that we talked slightly about that migration that's happening out of Atlanta coming into your area, among others, around that metropolitan Atlanta area. Is that really the main trend that's going on there? What are the enrollment trends in your area?
I think my biggest takeaway from this admission cycle is that our day families are applying earlier in the admission cycle and at younger grades. I think there was a tendency that, we'll wait till middle school, we'll wait till high school. And as we've seen, our public school number of quarantines grow, and taking 2-week pauses in the in-person learning locally, our applications have increased. We do have a what we call an early action program, whereas if you get everything completed by December 31st, you can lock in this year's tuition. In the past, we've had anywhere from 2 to 10 families in that early action lock in the tuition. This year was 37. So those families are not applying for tuition assistance. So we are seeing an increase there, and in those younger grades, which is great. But we are single section through 2nd grade. So we're at the point where we have to turn away some legacy families if this trend continues, which I guess is a good problem to have.
That is a good problem to have.
But we are seeing more families that want to hear our story about college prep, that they realizing that, an independent school tuition is a sacrifice, for every family, no matter what your net income is. So people are really, what is the college landscape going to look like? How are you going to prepare my child? So we are seeing that. We are seeing home sales prices increase by 16% compared to last January. I think families are leaving metro areas and looking for a more suburban, I hate to say suburban, we're not rural, we're not suburban, a smaller community, a more welcoming community. And a lot of those families, their children are already in independent schools. So they are coming to us first as they're thinking about moving to this area to compare their current independent school to Darlington. So we're seeing that. It's been good. Growing up in New York State, teaching in New Hampshire and Connecticut, I still have lots of friends whose own children have not been in the classroom yet this year. Georgia, thankfully, and politics aside, made some decisions to open up early. And I think that gave us as school leadership the opportunity to really plan what a school year can look like. And, having classes, having sports is great for students. Not being able to have a homecoming dance, not having class trips or field trips, the big question: what is prom?
Yeah,
What is a graduation going to look like? I think that's hard, but I think that our families know that we are wrestling with those questions. We're not defaulting to, well, school A or school B is doing it that way, so we're going to do it the same way. Is that we are making independent decisions, and
that's right.
I think our local community appreciates that. They know the thought process that we have. What's in the best interest of the students, and I think that is what is going to help us in this admission cycle, is that so many people know that we are student first. We're student centered, thinking about the students, what is in their best interest, and what is safe and what is responsible.
Yep.
So everything that we have done with COVID this year has been with the students and their safety first and foremost.
I think that there has been a very, very strong, from what I'm hearing, that parent community partnership with the school. And, we talked a little bit about expectations before, but, last spring, towards the end of the year, it was just so new. Everything was so unknown. Everything was just getting tossed around. Of course, you have drive-through graduations and things like this. And, now we've got a year to plan. I think that the families understand that things will not be, there will still be missed experiences than your typical traditional year. But at the same time, I think they have the confidence and, hopefully the communication two-way street with the school to know that, things are getting implemented. We are trying to make this the best experience that we possibly can within the parameters of what we're able to do, given the certain circumstances. And luckily, independent schools have a huge advantage in being able to do that, whether it be, even with the hardships and finances that they're seeing, they still have an independent ability with their budgets to focus at how they like. Where on a public option, you don't really have those abilities, and you could really make the best out of a bad situation, especially when you're student focused, like you were saying. So that's very important. We talked about that a lot. I guess my last question, we always close with a positive note, and you've kind of mentioned it. You've got these newer applicants, younger applicants coming in quicker. You've got some new international countries coming through in small cases. Your domestic boarding is obviously doing well. What do you see as the biggest enrollment opportunity for you this year?
I think it's in our middle grades. Thinking that the parents are wanting to make sure their child is prepared for high school. We have some great character, leadership, and academic programs, as well as athletic opportunities. Our local public schools have made some decisions that I don't think are student-centered for middle school age students, moving 8th graders to the high school campus, moving 5th graders to the middle school campus for cost-saving measures. So I think that we need to capitalize on that to grow our middle school, which has been relatively flat for the last 5 or 10 years in terms of enrollment. So we're hoping that the decisions that other local leaders have made will help us there, along with that, college prep focus. Obviously, we're very encouraged by the domestic boarding numbers of applicants, but making sure that we are balancing the financial piece of that school while the applications are up. So are the financial aid applications for those students. So I think there's going to be some opportunities to provide an independent boarding education to a lot of students. But how are we doing that from a fiduciary standpoint is important. My pitch to our board of trustees in January is our next campaign needs to have some endowed merit scholarship opportunity as part of that, so that we can give as many students a Darlington education as possible. I think that the opportunities really come from schools like Darlington being flexible, knowing that students are in a variety of different stages in terms of their academic and emotional and social growth right now. Is that as we look at probably this admission cycle and then the next two, students are going to be in very different places compared to where they have been. Talking with my wife last night, who's a first grade teacher, she goes, last year I was like 3 weeks ahead of where I am now. It's like, and remember, last year these kids didn't have in-person learning for 3 months. So,
right.
And if we're seeing that in first grade, how does that ramp up until they're ready to go to college. So I think it's that flexibility, and I think that our faculty, our administration understands that, and we're going to be willing and able to support students where they are on their journey. And I think that that's the key for independent schools, is that we can't rely or rest on our laurels of whether this is who we are. We are all need to be changing as our industry changes.
Absolutely. And those are great points. I agree with you 100%. I mean, that's some of the benefits of independent schools and their ability to be flexible and meet their families where they are. So, Matt, thank you so much. What a robust conversation. We covered a lot today. I really appreciate it. I think we have some great insights for anyone that was listening in or checking this out afterwards. I really appreciate you taking the better part of an hour here out of your day, out of your busy Monday, start to the week, and spending it with me. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse. I hope you have a great rest of the week and a great admission season.
Appreciate it. Thank you. See you later. You too. Right. Best of luck.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Well, that'll do it for us today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you'd like to see this episode along with any of the other previous season 1 episodes, you can go to schoolcraftdigital.com. It's right there on the resources page. We also have all of them on our Facebook and our YouTube pages, Schoolcraft Digital. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week.